Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it is a pleasure, albeit a sad necessity, for many of us to speak in this debate yet again in this House. And the analysis that I've seen from Open Doors and others shows that over the last 3 years alone, over 10,000 Christians have been killed for their faith. That is a truly staggering number. And we are right to have this debate today because, as others have mentioned, the evidence is that Christians are the target of around 80% of all the acts of religious discrimination or persecution around the world. But I think it's important that we actually briefly focus on the other 20% as well, as other members have done, and it is a huge slight to this country that there are record levels of anti-Semitism here in the United Kingdom. We are not alone. They've increased by some 27% in France as well. We know that Muslims are persecuted around the world. We've heard about the internment in China earlier. 49 were killed in the mosque attack in New Zealand not so long ago, and indeed here in the UK in June 2017, a 51-year-old man was killed coming out of a mosque in Islington. In New York, in 2016, an imam and his associate were also killed as well. But actually, we also shouldn't forget the issues that atheists face around the world as well. 13 Muslim countries punish atheism or apostasy by death, and in others there can be with the withdrawal of legal status. And so, whilst it is right that today we have a debate that focuses on the 80%, I know many other members want to put on record that we are concerned about all abuses of human rights in matters of faith, and their diminution for any faith diminishes all of us, Christian or otherwise, in this House. Now, there are so many, sadly, countries that we could turn to. And for my part, I am going to turn to North Korea, which has been at the top of Open Doors World Watch List for a long time. I often feel that North Korea doesn't really get the attention that it should do in these debates, probably because so little information comes out. But some information does come out, actually, from time to time. And I think we need to recognise the quite indescribable brutality against Christians in that country, and the fact that this is absolutely directed by the government of that country. And I, for one, would just like to see greater protest about that from young people and from others, because it is absolutely unacceptable. I learnt recently of a report from a defector from the North Korean National Security Agency, who was talking about being trained to look for things such as people who remain silent with their eyes closed or meditating, or to look when habitual smokers or drinkers quit smoking or drinking all of a sudden, and that those people should be watched closely because that was a sign that they might well be Christians. And then severe, very, very severe recrimination, including torture, often leading to death, would follow as a result. And there are brave people who've escaped from North Korea. Some have spoken in Speaker's House, Madam Deputy Speaker, actually, of what goes on there. And it gives me pleasure today just to give amplification to their words, because we don't hear and say enough about what goes on in North Korea, in this country. We also know that the North Korean National Security Service spies a commission to set up fake secret prayer meetings to attract Christians who will again then be imprisoned and incarcerated. Those are the lengths to which that deeply evil regime goes to stop any form of faith happening in that country. Madam Deputy Speaker, later on this year we have the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali in Rwanda. That happens every 2 years, and I am a big fan of the Commonwealth. I think it does great work around the world, and having left the European Union, it is an organisation we are going to need to invest in even more strongly to boost our trade links and our links of friendship with that very important member organisation. But if members look down the World Watch list, they will see that on that list, India, Nigeria, Brunei, Cameroon, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kenya and Malaysia are all on that list. And they are all Commonwealth countries, 9 of them, which, frankly, have some things to answer for in terms of how they are treating Christians. So one of my questions to my very good friend, the Minister, who I know takes these issues extremely seriously, if she can give us an answer in the debate today, if she can't, perhaps she could write to us, is whether Her Majesty's Government will engage on the issue of freedom of religion and belief with our Commonwealth friends and partners at the CHOGM meeting in Kigali in Rwanda later on this year. Now, like many members here, I am extremely proud of the fact that our right honourable friend, the member for South West Surrey, instituted the Bishop of Truro review. It is absolutely right he did that, and it's even better news that the last government committed to it and our current Prime Minister has committed to it, and we have a fantastic envoy for this area, indeed who I spoke to in America early this morning. He might be in Washington, Madam Deputy Speaker, but he's still on the case and he's very interested in what we are doing in this House today. And he was running me through some of the recommendations, and I just want to focus on 3 of them in particular. The first is that the United Kingdom will be seeking a Security Council resolution. I know the Minister was already asked about that earlier. I understand the United Kingdom will assume the presidency of the United Nations Security Council shortly, and I hope that will be a time when we will press forward with that important resolution to governments in the Middle East and North Africa to protect Christians and other persecuted minorities in those countries. That is absolutely necessary. The second recommendation I'd just like to focus on is the training that we provide our excellent diplomats. And we are extremely fortunate in this country to have a world-class diplomatic representation. And as one of the Prime Minister's trade envoys, I have the privilege of working with some of our diplomats, and they do fantastic work for this country all the way around the world. And I understand the recommendation is that all Foreign Office staff at home and abroad should have mandatory training on religious literacy, and that in some British embassies and high commissions in relevant companies there should be tailored responses to any violations of freedom of religion or belief. And again, if the Minister is able to update us on, I think, the ongoing procurement of further training for our diplomats, that would be very helpful. It does need to get into the DNA and the culture of the Foreign Office. This is bread and butter business as to what they are about. The trade deals matter, but so does freedom of religion and belief. And then the final recommendation that I would just like to dwell on for a little bit is the consideration of imposing sanctions on perpetrators of serious human rights abuses against religious minorities, including Christians. And again, I know that the government is working on this, and I think it would be really helpful to the House, actually, if the Minister, in her response, could perhaps flesh out if the Foreign Office has any particular countries in mind. Indeed, it might actually be helpful to those countries to know they are potentially in the frame. Perhaps they would raise their game and make improvements so the sanctions didn't happen. But I think it would be useful to the House. What is the process? What sort of things is the government looking at? How will those sanctions apply? If the persecution comes from the whole government, is it just going to apply to individuals or to the government as a whole? And how will these sanctions be worked into our trade negotiations? I mean, obviously, we hope that the mere threat of them would lead to improvements, so they wouldn't need to be imposed. In the sense, to impose a sanction is always a failure, isn't it? It's a tool you want to have in the box and you don't want to have to use. But, sometimes you do need to take the tools out of the box if there isn't change or action. So I think it would be really helpful to the House if the Minister could very kindly flesh out a little bit more of the government thinking in that area. And if she's not able to do it today, because I may have put her on the spot, again, perhaps she could very kindly write to us just setting out the government thinking in this area.